From a rocket fuel depot that just went up in smoke in Nevada, leaving a huge crater outside Las Vegas, to a port blast in Beirut that practically leveled an entire city. And get this, an underwater mountain in Vancouver that was blown sky high, and a stockpile of 7,000 tons of World War II munitions that almost sank a tiny island. I'm talking about some of the biggest non-nuclear explosions ever recorded, and we're going to watch them together. Pepcon, 1988. You know, we all love watching something go boom, right? The thing is, some of the absolute biggest non-nuclear explosions were either too massive or just happened too fast for anyone to film. So for this video, we're only looking at the ones we actually have footage of. First up, a rocket fuel plant outside of Las Vegas that gambled on the future of space travel and just lost. The Pacific Engineering and Production Company of Nevada, or Pepcon, started way back in 1958. They were making a powerful oxidizer for NASA's Space Shuttle program, which is basically rocket fuel. After the Challenger disaster in 1986, the US government grounded the space program. This left Pepcon with a massive problem. They had about 4,500 metric tons of extra fuel just sitting there. They were literally sitting on a small nuclear bomb, waiting for it to go off in the blistering Nevada heat. May 4th, 1988 started out like any other day, but sparks from a welder's torch ignited a barrel of ammonium perchlorate around 11:30 that morning. The crazy part? There were no fire suppression systems where they were storing these barrels. The facility just wasn't big enough to safely hold over 6 million pounds of rocket fuel. Workers tried to fight the blaze with hoses, but that was like bringing a water pistol to a volcano. Everyone got out except for Roy Westerfield, the plant controller, who stayed behind to call 911. Sadly, that decision meant he probably knew he wouldn't be coming back out. Meanwhile, a cameraman on a nearby mountain called Black Mountain saw the smoke and started recording. This is what happens when 1,000 barrels of rocket fuel go off all at once.
Ooh, that's gonna be loud!
If you thought that was big, just wait until you see the main blast. I mean, if you didn't know better, you might think a nuke had gone off outside Las Vegas. There were 7 explosions in total, with the biggest one having a force of 25 kilotons of TNT. A local historian, Mark Patton, the guy from Pawn Stars, said the Pepcon disaster was the largest civilian explosion in US history. It injured over 400 people and killed 2. Tianjin, 2015. Okay, fast forward to August 12th of 2015 in Tianjin, China. Nobody knew it, but the Ruihai International Logistics Company was just holding on to over 1,000 tons of illegally stored chemicals. Their warehouses were right near the port of Tianjin, one of the busiest trade hubs in the world. Ruihai was founded in 2011 to be faster than its state-run rivals at shipping hazardous chemicals. But you know how it is. Money got in the way of safety. The higher-ups started bribing officials to let them ignore regulations. What could possibly go wrong, right? On the night of the 12th, firefighters showed up to a fire in the warehouse yard. They had no idea about the deadly chemicals inside. And since corrupt business owners don't exactly keep detailed records of their illegal stuff, the firefighters didn't know what they were fighting until it was way too late. Those blasts combined to blow the doors and windows off 17,000 homes and buildings. They killed over 100 firefighters and 70 civilians. That second blast you saw was the biggest one that night. It felt like a 2.9 magnitude earthquake and had a force equivalent to nearly 22 tons of TNT. Afterward, the chairman of Ruihai was fined over $100,000 and went to jail, along with 48 other employees and government officials. The Tianjin explosion caused about $1 billion in economic losses and is one of the worst industrial disasters in Chinese history. Beirut, 2020. On August 4, 2020, a fire at the port of Beirut set off one of the biggest non-nuclear explosions in human history. Almost 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate detonated in Warehouse 12. creating a shockwave so powerful it registered as a 3.3 magnitude earthquake. No one saw it coming. No one was ready. And no one knew this disaster had been 7 years in the making. Let's rewind to September 27, 2013. A cargo ship called the MV Rosas was on its way from Georgia to Mozambique, carrying 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate, a key ingredient in explosives. After a technical problem, the ship had to dock in Beirut. The Russian owner couldn't afford the port fees and just stopped paying. So Beirut seized the ship and unloaded the cargo. The ammonium nitrate was stored in Warehouse 12, where it was supposed to be auctioned off or properly disposed of. Over the next 6 years, several warnings about the dangers of storing these explosive chemicals were just ignored. At one point, someone even had the brilliant idea to store fireworks in the same warehouse. Around 5:55 p.m., a fire broke out. An initial fireworks explosion happened at 6:07 p.m. And then, 30 seconds later, almost 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate detonated, blowing the port to pieces. The blast wave knocked down buildings across the Lebanese capital, wounding over 6,000 people and killing 218. Ammonium nitrate isn't as powerful as TNT. It's about 50% weaker. The blast was still somewhere between 0.5 and 1.1 kilotons of TNT, which was big enough to leave a 140-meter-wide crater. As of 2020, no one has been arrested or held accountable. It's a tragedy that still needs justice. Ripple Rock, 1958. The Seymour Narrows is this 3-mile waterway between Vancouver and the Discovery Islands in British Columbia. Not many people know this, but this little stretch of water used to be a sailor's worst nightmare. It was basically Canada's version of Davy Jones's Locker, and it was all because of Ripple Rock, a massive underwater mountain with 2 sharp peaks that were just a few feet below the surface at low tide. Over the years, those peaks sank or damaged 20 large ships and at least 100 smaller ones. It's said that 114 sailors died because of Ripple Rock. So in 1955, they started this crazy project to finally put an end to it. Workers dug a 570-foot vertical shaft and then tunneled about 2,500 feet under the Seymour Narrows, right to the base of Ripple Rock. Then they dug 2 branching tunnels that went up into the mountain. Finally, they packed them with 1,400 tons of high explosives. The detonation of Ripple Rock on April 5, 1958, was the biggest non-nuclear blast in the world at that time. It displaced around 635,000 metric tons of rock and water, sending debris flying over 300 meters. The blast increased the low-tide clearance to about 14 meters, or roughly 45 feet. Since then, not a single accident has been blamed on those Ripple Rock peaks. Port Chicago, 1944. On July 17, 1944, the United States was deep in the throes of World War II. At the Port Chicago Naval Magazine in California, segregated groups of African-American men were working around the clock, loading munitions onto ships. They were told the weapons weren't active, but that was a lie. The white officers in charge would place bets on which black crews could load the fastest, and safety regulations were largely ignored. On the evening of July 17th, 2 cargo ships were at the pier. One was packed with over 4,600 tons of high explosives. At 10:18 p.m., a dull clang was followed by a bright flash. Seconds later, over 5,000 tons of munitions exploded at once. Anything within a 1,000-foot radius was obliterated. About 320 people, including 202 black dock workers, died instantly. The blast was equal to 5,000 tons of TNT, making it the worst accidental disaster on the U.S. home front during the war. A month later, the surviving African-American workers refused to keep loading the deadly munitions. 50 of them were convicted of mutiny and received a 15-year jail sentence. The Port Chicago disaster and trial became a crucial turning point for civil rights in the U.S. military. Heligoland, 1947. Located 30 miles off the northwestern coast of Germany, Heligoland Island has been a highly contested area for centuries. The English occupied it until 1890, when they traded it to Germany. During World War II, Germany fortified the island, and after the war, the British used its underground tunnels to store dangerous amounts of leftover munitions. In 1947, tired of the old Nazi base, the English launched Operation Big Bang. They loaded roughly 7,000 tons of surplus munitions into the buildings and tunnels. English officers 9 miles away wondered if the blast would be powerful enough to sink the entire island. There was only one way to find out. The blast was equivalent to 3.2 kilotons of TNT. When the smoke cleared, only a German anti-aircraft tower was left standing. In 1952, the British returned control to Germany. The island has since become a popular vacation spot. Minor scale, 1985. Between 1945 and 1996, over 2,000 nuclear bomb tests were conducted worldwide. But in 1963, a treaty banned testing in the atmosphere, underwater, or in space. So the U.S. Department of Defense came up with a workaround, using high-explosive tests to simulate a small nuclear weapon. In 1981, they launched Operation Misty Castle, a series of large-scale tests. The third event, Operation Minor Scale, was the biggest nuclear simulation test ever. The plan was simple. Rig about 4,800 tons of high explosives and see how big a boom it makes. Construction crews built a dome-shaped structure to house the explosive stockpile, along with dummy buildings to test the damage. The explosive compound was ANFO, or ammonium nitrate fuel oil. It was significantly cheaper than pure TNT, so it was perfect for the experiment. All that ANFO was loaded into the dome and rigged to blow on June 27, 1985. Let's just say they were pleased with the results. The blast produced an explosive yield of 4.2 kilotons of TNT, making it the largest planned conventional explosion since Operation Big Bang. N-1 rocket, 1969. It was early 1969, and the space race was in its final lap. The US was getting ready for the final lunar landing, while the Soviets were scrambling to catch up with their secret N-1 rocket. This thing was so big it needed 165 railway cars just to deliver the parts. On February 21, 1969, the N-1 finally launched. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. The engines malfunctioned, and within 60 seconds, the rocket crashed. It landed about 32 miles from the launch pad and allegedly killed 91 people. The accident wasn't made public until 1995. The second failed attempt on July 3rd of the same year truly defined the N-1's legacy. Several thrusters shut down just seconds into the flight. The N-1 made it just over 300 feet before it broke apart and crashed back down with about 1,300 tons of propellant on board. The explosion shattered windows and sent debris flying up to 6 miles away. What's even crazier is that the blast could have been exponentially worse. An investigation found that 85% of the fuel didn't detonate. The resulting blast yield is debated, but some claim it was as high as 7 kilotons of TNT, making it about half as strong as the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. A full-scale failure would have likely wiped the launch area off the face of the Earth. Mexico City gas explosion, 1984. On November 19, 1984, a huge gas explosion rocked Mexico City. A massive series of blasts at a state-owned petroleum storage facility in the San Juan Ixhuatepec neighborhood destroyed homes, businesses, and lives. The facility had been overfilled, and a rupture in a pipeline caused a leak of liquid petroleum gas, LPG. The resulting fire triggered a domino effect, with dozens of spherical storage tanks exploding one after another. The official death toll was over 500 people, but many believe the number was much higher, with some estimates reaching 2,000. The explosions left a massive crater and a scorched landscape, and the tragic event led to significant changes in safety regulations for gas storage facilities worldwide. Buncefield Fire, 2005. On December 11, 2005, a major fire and series of explosions occurred at the Buncefield oil storage terminal in Hertfordshire, England. The disaster started when a tank overflowed, leaking a large cloud of fuel vapor. When the vapor ignited, it caused a massive explosion that was heard from over 125 miles away. The initial blast, which was the largest in Europe since World War II, was followed by a huge fire that took several days to put out. Miraculously, no one was killed, but 43 people were injured, and hundreds of homes and businesses were damaged. The event was a wake-up call for the petroleum industry, highlighting the need for better safety protocols and automated systems to prevent tank overfilling. What's an explosion you'll never forget? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating stories.